Support this podcast via our Patreon and get more writerly goodness. Visit patreon.com/nanocast to join up.
Welcome to NaNoWriMo Every Month. My name is J. Daniel Sawyer. I'm the author of some 20 books, 34 short stories, and numerous articles and other things, and I am your guide on this journey to use NaNoWriMo to level up to professional output levels. Welcome to The Questions, Episode 24. And you guys have been remarkably good to me. We've got 16 more episodes worth of questions that I'm going to go through here. This is a brand new block after the previous block of 11. This will take me up to episode 39. Keep those questions coming in if you want the cast to continue beyond that point. And please consider donating to the tip jar or picking up some of my other books or supporting the Patreon page for this podcast. There will be an announcement about that at the end of this episode. Our question today comes from Michael, who asks, I know that some authors work on multiple books at once or take breaks from their books to write articles and other works. I have recently read a blog post from a few authors who listed their works in progress, and there were quite a few. How does that work, given how engrossed you can get in the world you're building? How do you organize all your data, facts, characters, and the like? Well, Michael, I am one of these authors who keeps a number of different projects going at the same time. It really depends on the projects as to how exactly I juggle. On any given book, my process goes like this. I start out with whatever my prompt is. Sometimes it's a quote that inspired me. Sometimes it's a lecture that I watched that had a couple ideas in it that I want to explore. Sometimes it's a title I'm working from. Quite frequently, what'll happen is I'll get that initial seed and I'll develop it out to a pitch, which would be, 2 or 3 paragraphs tops. Sometimes it's only a sentence about what the story is about. The story doesn't always stick to that pitch as I write it out, but I think it's my screenwriting training. I tend to start working from pitches and work from there. Once I've got the pitch developed, it goes into my Works in Progress folder. The Works in Progress folder on my computer is subdivided into unclassified ideas, novels, and then under the novels there's different series, and then short stories, and then under the short stories there's different series. When I get to the end of a project and I need to add another one to the hot plate, I go down into those folders and grab what looks interesting to me at the time. Now, when I grab one of those ideas, I don't always write it all the way through. Sometimes I get stuck. Sometimes an anthology request or opportunity will jump in the middle of another project I'm working on, and I want to try to write my way into that anthology, or I want to fulfill the request because, hey, someone comes to me offering me money to publish my stories. I tend to pay attention. Sometimes something else intervenes, life intervenes. I was in the middle of writing Suave Rob 3 when my father-in-law went terminally ill and died. And since Suave Rob is a fairly jocular sort of fellow, I found myself sort of grinding to a halt because I wasn't able to stay in that frame of mind while I'm dealing with all this death and dying crap in my personal life. So I wound up hopping over and writing a couple Clark Lantham books, and now I'm working on the next Antithesis/Mannix book, because those all have darker themes, right? The Lantham books are dark mysteries with a humorous voice and light overtones, and the Antithesis/Mannix stories are just really dark and complicated and full of intrigue. So that's much more where my head's going. So I left Suave Rob 3 when it had a lot of momentum behind it. I was 25,000 words into the book, and I just couldn't get any more traction on it. Now that life is starting to lighten up again, I'm circling around back to that. But this is actually fairly typical of the way I work. I keep a bunch of different projects going, and sometimes I'll stick with one main one all the way through and then hop to the next one. But frequently life will intervene, or there'll be other complications, or my head will just be all over the place. And so it's like rotating burners on a stove when you're cooking a complex meal. You'll have the sauce off to one side and the mashed potatoes off on another pot on another burner, and you'll have the meat or the fish cooking in another spot, and you'll be dealing with pasta or vegetables and a steamer and all that. And these things all cook at different rates, and the trick to cooking a successful hot meal is to juggle everything so that it not only comes out tasting good, but it all comes out at the same time. In the case of stories, it doesn't all have to come out at the same time, but I do find myself moving things off the low flame burners onto the high flame burners and working on them while they're hot, and then shuffling them to the back and pulling something else up when I find that I get stuck on something. And part of moving things to the back burner is it allows my subconscious to chew on them. Last year I finished a book called The Automotive, which will release this year. That book was on my back burner for about 5 years. I first got the idea for it in, it was 2009, and I made an attempt at writing it. I got stuck about 2 chapters in, put it on the back burner, came back to it about once a year, and I wound up starting and stopping, I think 6 or 7 times. Each time getting a little further, getting a little better idea of what was going on, but getting really stuck. And the reason is I was writing out of my depth. I was writing a kind of story that for various reasons was a real stretch for me. So I would write out to the point where I was stuck. I'd put it on the back burner so that it could cogitate in my subconscious. I would go write a different story that stretched me in another way. And over the course of the 5 years, maybe 6 years, I grew into the story and was able to finally sit down about a year ago now and finish it out from 20,000 to 90,000 words in the space of 15, 20 days. And that was a lot of fun to write that out and finish that. But in the years since, it's been on the back burner again because I realized with all the false starts, I have to go back through and attack it once more, the first 20,000 words where they've got all the false starts. I've basically got to do one more cycle through and make sure the continuity is all good. And I've had the kind of year that it's going to take a little bit of work to declench enough to get into that one creatively again because my brain has classified it as done when it's not really quite done. And in those 5 years, I wrote somewhere between 15 and 20 other books and God knows how many short stories and short story starts and novel starts that I haven't finished out yet. Nonfiction articles, nonfiction books, philosophy article. Anyway. It's been a busy 5 years, but I finally got that one done, and now I've got to figure out where the series is going because I've got 3 great titles for that series, and I want to finish out the series, and I did leave Volume 1 open-ended enough that it could work as a standalone, or we could come back and explore the rest of what was going on. But as far as rotating through projects, that's kind of how I do it. I also keep a lot of marginal notes. I find that when I write straight through, the mere fact of making the note is enough to make it irrelevant. I'll say something like, series Bible point, this character has blue eyes. And that way I know that this character has blue eyes, and the fact of writing it down in a note to myself means that it sticks in my head and I don't actually have to go back and refer to the note. And I frequently don't, but when I've left the story for a while, and I'm coming back to it, those notes show me where my head was as I was writing the story, and then I can decide to stick with them or throw them out. But when I come back to a story, I always read through what's on the page so far, and then start writing when I hit the end. That way it's all reloaded into my mind, so I don't have to keep track of everything when I'm not there at the keyboard writing the story. As far as keeping track of background, data, facts, characters like that. Some of that stuff I put in margin notes and it loads back in when I read. When I get done with things, I actually have another system that helps me keep track of things across a series. And I'll be talking about that in a few episodes because a lot of people asked about organizing your series data and facts and character sheets and things like that. So I'm going to put you off on that one till a later episode. But as far as the active management of multiple books at once, and multiple projects and other articles and such like, as well as multiple kinds of other projects, keeping margin notes to yourself, putting inline textual notes to yourself in brackets, those can help a lot. And if you know you're going to be leaving a project for a little while, writing yourself a paragraph or two at the end of the copy that you've written so far is a very good idea. You're basically looking to be able to communicate successfully with yourself across time. And however you can do that as much as you need to, some people don't need to do it a lot, other people need to do it a whole hell of a lot, anything you can do that works is perfectly fine. So that's it for today, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Support this podcast via our Patreon and get more writerly goodness. Visit patreon.com/nanocast to join up.
NaNoWriMo Every Month is written and presented by J. Daniel Sawyer and produced by Artistic Whispers Productions. Visit our website at NaNoWriMoEveryMonth.com and leave a tip in the tip jar or join the Patreon to support this podcast. NaNoWriMo Every Month is copyright 2016 by J. Daniel Sawyer and Artistic Whispers Productions and is released under a Creative Commons Non-Commercial Attribution No Derivatives license.